Yeah.
You know?
So we were talking about this the other day, golfing, and I was asking you because you were in the military
Uh-huh.
for 12 years,
11.
11,
Yeah.
11 years. And I was asking you, like, all right, so you could have stayed in the military longer. You kind of chose not to.
Yeah.
Kind of come home. When you came home, you really weren't sure what you wanted to do.
Right.
And
I didn't want to be a concrete guy. I didn't think that was not part of the plan.
yeah.
But no, yeah, 11 years in the Army. And then, so when I got out and moved here, like when I was first getting out, well, let's go back. When I deployed to Iraq and I was doing like bomb scene investigation stuff. So, so we, either pre-blast or post-blast, we'd go out, we'd, disarm if we could, or blow up if we had to, or if it already had blown up, then we'd go do, post-blast, investigations. So we would take, basically, like, the easiest way to explain it's like CSI, that show CSI. It's like CSI for the bomb squad, so that's what I was doing, and I loved it. It was a super awesome job. Obviously it was a lot of adrenaline in it, and it was a lot of fun. But deployed the first time and then came back, and then it was like 10 months later, deployed again, got back, and they were like, "You're going back in 6 months the next time." And I was like, "No, I'm not doing it. Two times enough for me." I got an 18-year-old son now, but at the time he was, 2, 3, 4 years old. So I was just missing too much. I was like, I got to get my tail back home. So that's when I decided to get out. And the Army hadn't officially made what I was doing a job. It was, it was a job, but it was not like an MOS is what they call it. It's like, it's what the Army calls a specific job, like your artillery guy or infantry guy or something, but there was no specific one geared towards this. So I couldn't stay doing that. I had to go back. I was an engineer, geospatial engineer, so doing maps and stuff. And it was a joint venture with the Air Force, and they needed an Army guy in a combat job to teach the Air Force guys how to drive a Humvee and not flip it over and not to, shoot themselves in the foot. So, because a lot of these Air Force guys that we were with were intel guys, so they had no real world, experience, right. So you throw a bunch of intel guys who are used to sitting behind a desk in the middle of Baghdad. They wanted one Army guy to keep them going, So, right. I don't know where I was going with that, but when we came back to Angelo, that's when I decided to get out.
I always liked military.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
The only thing I don't like about it is that, the government owns you for a period of time.
They say they do. Anyway, there's been a lot more of that change. I feel like, after the COVID deal, because a lot of those guys said, "Hell no, you're not giving me that shot." And I actually did that, because whenever I got back from Iraq, before you go, it's like basic training. When you get to basic training, you walk in, they shave your head, they strip you down, and you walk in a single file line, and there's like 10 nurses on each side, and they're just sticking you with stuff, and to an 18-year-old kid or 20-year-old kid, you're just like, "Oh, whatever, this is what I'm supposed to do. What I'm supposed to do." Yeah. So, but then before you go like to Iraq, it's basically the same thing. You got to go through all this checklist of things and get all your immunizations and all this stuff, and anthrax and all that. And so we do that, and then we go to Iraq, and then we come back, and they're like, "Here's another medical immunization sheet you need to go do. You need to go take 15 more shots of different stuff." And when I got back, I was a little hot, just from being in combat, and we were running, 5 or 6 missions a day sometimes, so we were busy. And when I got back, they were like, you need to go get all these shots. And I'm like, what? Why do I need an anthrax 17 shot or whatever these various ones were? And I was like, I'm not doing it. And I got into a few big arguments with some of my leadership because they were like, you have to do this. And I'm like, no, I don't. It's still my body. And, you know, if you want to kick me out because I don't want to go get this shot, then get after it, you know? And they didn't. So, but I worked.
They started doing anthrax shots after Vietnam, though, right?
Yeah. And I was, so whenever I was in Iraq, they came out with a thing called, well, they didn't, it wasn't new, but like back in Vietnam, you know, World War II, they had these things called combat promotions. Basically, you're all out there doing it, and you know, I'm a private and you're my sergeant, and you get murked. Well, I'm the next guy in line, so lieutenant just be like, hey, you're now Sergeant Johnston, you know, or Sergeant Copeman, go, you know, lead these guys and keep on with the mission. So they did away with that after Vietnam, which we didn't really have any big wars, you know, for a long time. But I was a E4, a specialist at the time when we went to Iraq, and some of those Air Force guys just couldn't handle the heat that we were in. You know, they signed up to join the military to be in the intel field. They didn't sign up to go kick indoors, you know, or go look for bombs that hadn't been exploded yet. So some of them were, you know, higher enlisted guys, but they just did not have what it took to go out there and do that, you know, and it's whatever. But so I kind of stepped up and started leading the team because I kind of had to. There was only when one of the head higher up Air Force guys dropped out, and it's, you know, everybody handles things different. First couple of times he got shot at, he was like, no, I'm not doing this. I've signed up for the Air Force to be in the intel field, so that's what I'm going to go do. So so I stepped up, and because we were working so many missions every day and every week, you know, that it just was running the other guy, the next guy in line, just running ragged. I said, dude, I can do this. And you know, after so many missions, the higher up leadership knew that as well, you know, just because I had this rank on my chest, they were like, you can do this. But that was technically, I was an E4, that was an E7 position. I was sergeant first class position. So we ran so many missions and did so many things over there, and me stepping up towards the end of our 18 months in Iraq. General Petraeus at the time was the one over all of Iraq and Afghanistan. And he said, I'm bringing back combat promotions because he's reading all the reports and everything going on in country and going, there's privates out here doing sergeant first class's jobs and they're not getting the credit or the pay or, you know, anything for that. So he brought that back, and they did it countrywide in all of Iraq, and it was per brigade. You could choose, each brigade got to choose one person, and they do a write-up on it and then send it in, and then so many people would. So I was one of the first ones since Vietnam to get that combat promotion, and I got promoted by General Petraeus. So that was super cool for me, you know. And
that's
then,
pretty unique, just in general.
For sure, yeah. So then when I got back, you know, from Iraq too, I was maybe had a little big head on me too, you know. But
after you got back, did you, and all the time that you spent overseas, was it worth it? I mean, what did we need to be there?
Oh no. They would call it, you know, you go over there and win the hearts and minds, you know. But no, that was all political, all money, it was all government, you know. That's, if in my opinion, and some guys may disagree. I'm proud that I served my country and I went and did that, you know, and some of the best and worst times of my life, and I learned a lot and grew up a lot, and so it was dang sure a good thing to do. But no, Saddam was an evil man for sure, but he had those people in check. They weren't doing a bunch of crazy stuff, you know, when he was around, because him and his sons were murdering them and throwing them in their private lake out there beside the palace, you know. So
which when you were out there, which countries were you in, or were you just in one every time you were serving?
No, so the first time I was in Iraq, and then the second time we were in UAE, United Arab Emirates.
Really?
Yeah, so we were like basically just out in the middle of the desert that time, in between like Dubai and Abu Dhabi, just out in the middle of nowhere. So they were, and I was doing missiles then. So we were doing like if somebody over there was going to shoot a Scud at one of the cities or something, or over there, we had little Air Force bases and different things, because we were sharing with the Air Force on that deployment too. So yeah, that was my second time. And then after that, I was
Iraq is the one that was like 1980s was actually a very booming economic place.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, it had gardens and hotels and centers, and like people would go over there to travel for vacation.
Yeah.
If you go look at the pictures back in, I think it was 81 or something along those lines.
Yeah, and they're trying to bring that back. You know, they got big soccer. You know, soccer's big everywhere, but they're.
Well, I think it has such a stigma from the United States, because I mean, anytime we talk about Iraq, Iran, we just think of a desert. But you start looking into it, you're like, man, this is like first world. You know, cities and civilizations and people and colleges. And
Baghdad's pretty much a shithole. You know, Iraq's pretty much a shithole, just like Trump said. You know, it is 100%. Saddam's palaces and stuff, you know, and all his generals had palaces and this big compound, and I mean, they're beautiful, like marble walls, you know, golden toilets, you know, that's the whole thing. But it was all, you know, giant chandeliers, like no kidding, as big as this room, you know, hanging up inside this palace, and they're all plastic. But he would bring people in, you know, and look at this. Oh, yeah, it's glass, you know, made wherever. He'd have all these guys come build this palace, and the marble would be super thin, you know, all over the walls. When they get done, he'd kill them all because he didn't want them to tell people how cheap it was.
Really?
Yeah. But I mean, still beautiful places, you know.
It's kind of ironic because he died in a cave, you know. Yeah. There's a lot of irony in that.
Yeah.
Like,
nuts.
You know, like going into the military, where did you go when you were young because you didn't know what you wanted to do, or because you knew you wanted to serve, but you didn't know what?
Kind of both. Like, I knew I wanted to serve. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I also had a baby on the way. So that was another big deal. So I was working two jobs. I graduated high school, and I was going around with a buddy of mine's dad, who he was a great big guy, and he was a preacher, and he was an oil field guy, and he had a bunch of wells and stuff all over. And he was walking up a catwalk to check some tanks one day and fell off of it or something, hurt himself pretty good. So the timing worked out right. And so I would just ride around with him, go check wells and do whatever he needed me to do throughout the day. And then I'd jump in the truck and go 20 miles to the next town and go cut hay, you know, all night, and sit on a tractor for the rest of the time. And I was like, well, I can't do this forever. So, you know, at least, and that was during the time that they needed bodies, you know, they needed guys. So they were giving $20,000, $50,000 bonuses, you know, to sign up. So it's like, yeah, sign me up. Let's go. So,
and you're like, oh, okay, got insurance, got steady income.
Right. Yeah. I don't have to pay for that baby bill coming up. So,
that kind of nervousness, pre-baby nervousness is something.
Yeah.
I don't know how to really explain it. It's just, you know, it's really never like, it's never as bad as like you think it's going to be, but that, it definitely will give you.
Well, young men, you're sitting there going, you know, I could take care of myself, probably not very well, but I can. And now, oh crap, I got somebody else I really got to take care of.
Yeah.
All right.
I can see how that motivated you to find some structure.
Yeah, for sure.
And you probably, you know, deep down, you knew like, this is going to suck, but it's what has to be done.
Yeah.
And,
it wasn't bad. You know, when I was, I'd always been a good runner. I hate running, hated it, you know, but I was good at it. So, and if you're in the military and you can run, you know, that's a good thing. So it was pretty easy from then on, you know, just keep your mouth shut and listen. And
Right.
In today's time, with the way the world's going and how politics are, would you suggest kids now go into the military?
I would still, I think, because it's a structured thing. It makes them focus on something, and it's easy. You're told when, where, what, go do this, but it helps you grow up, and especially if it's in a wartime deal, for sure. But I think a lot of kids nowadays really need to. Like even my son, he's talking about wanting to do the Coast Guard, or something like that. I'm like, absolutely, you should do that. Just because I know what it did for me. It helped me have structure and leadership and all the things.
What is for going into it? Because obviously, Sterling, I've never enlisted, but what not to do while enlisting? Is there more information where you can have them? I hear a lot of people say, "Well, I got lied to when I enlisted."
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, but it's. I mean, yeah, everybody gets lied to, and because you go in, they're like, all right, here's your sheet, choose 3 places you want to go. Everybody's going to pick Hawaii and Germany, and all these things. And they're like, nope, you're going to New Mexico. They don't give a crap,
Going to Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Great.
I had a joke, that's back in the day that they had all those Army commercials, and they'd be like, join the Army, see the world, and I was like, man, I joined the Army and I did get to see the world. I got to see Iraq and Kuwait and all these desert foreign countries. I was like, well, they didn't lie, technically. Didn't get to go see the country, just the crappy parts I didn't really want to see.